talking with Jocelyn Kervin this evening, I gotta say, the thing that just kept on coming back to me with every single topic that we talked about was just so, how into her job she is. She is so incredibly dedicated to making sure that not only are the courses on point, but definitely the experiences that her students have are authentic, diverse, and as she kind of mentioned several times, are building a family connection for them. I love the fact that we were able to delve into a little bit what education looks like right now from an experiential learning point of view. It was really cool to be able to sort of unpack a little bit what it means to be a risk taker of the classroom and how sometimes for teachers it can be kind of challenging to get out of your own way. The Chasing Squirrels podcast is all about trying to figure out these things and try and see how some of the changes in education impact the people that are both inside and outside the box. Jocelyn Kervin definitely represents one of those educators that's pushing the limits and constantly looking to improve herself. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. All right, we're rolling. Hi, Jocelyn.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
I'm well, thanks. This is awesome. I'm so happy that you could drop me in like at 9:30 p.m. at night just to satisfy my podcasting addiction.
My pleasure. No problem at all. I'm flattered to be here.
I want to tell you that, and we were talking just before I hit the record, that, you're kind of digging the fact that I'm throwing down this podcast. And I have to say, it's entirely my interest in doing these types of things. You have played a part in making me think outside of my teaching box. Cool. And one of the things that I don't think I ever made completely clear to you when we were working together back in the day is just how impressed, just a standing O for you as far as, how hard you work. No joke. I think I've said it in small pieces before, but that really is like one of the things that when I think of the people that just dig in and get the work done, you are that person.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That's nice to hear.
And part of it is then I say, okay, if she can do it, so should I. Or maybe she should, give herself a break. Well, flip side. There is, and again, when we're talking before, we're talking about a little bit about the cost of the passion and sort of the cost of being so intensively in love with your job.
Yeah.
But when you are in love with your job, that can happen.
Yeah.
Right? That type of passion does have. But
Absolutely.
I want to tell you, you make me want to work harder. When I think about the individuals that I've met in my teaching career so far, you do. I follow you on Twitter. I knew of the things that you were working on when we were working together before, and I wrote down here on my little side notes, you are a pirate, and I thought you might take that as a compliment.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I love what I do, and I get to do it every day. So it's kind of exciting to know that there are people out there that enjoy that. So thanks.
So just for some of the one or two listeners that we may get, I might be up to two.
Okay, this is good. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, in the broadest sense, just what is your teaching portfolio?
I am a high school music teacher, so I teach secondary band and vocal courses, and I run ensembles and extracurricular activities and all that kind of fun stuff that goes along with running a high school music program.
So part of me, observing the past, and we don't work together now, but I knew how intensively you worked in the classes and seeing you zip around the school and you got your tech, you got your music, you've got your moving your cart going to the next classroom.
Yeah.
But the thing that struck me the most about what the deeper level of what you were putting into your program was the extracurric.
Right.
Was that sort of the not in the classroom stuff. Mm-hmm. So can you run through just like some of the extracurricular that is like that many people might not even realize is so important to, let's say, your program, an arts program, or just like class experience in general?
Okay. Well, you've got your standard extracurricular sorts of things like band. But along with band, for instance, is not just sort of having those kids come out to a rehearsal every week and maybe putting on a concert. It's things like getting the kids to attend festivals, maybe not for the competition side of it, but for the experience of working towards a goal and working towards excellence, and then getting to go and share that with a larger audience that maybe is not personally invested in their success. Because if you do a concert, a lot of times it's for family and friends. And that audience is super supportive and they're wonderful. And you know you're going to get a good feedback sort of thing from them. But taking it further than that and giving them those experiences where they get the chance to share that with a wider audience, I think is incredibly important. So there's all that side of the extracurricular. And then there's things like field trips and so on that need to happen for art students so they can see professionals doing what they're doing. So going to the opera, going to the symphony, Toronto Symphony Orchestra or whatever, or going down and seeing the behind the scenes. A lot of times when I do take students to the opera, we make sure we do a backstage tour.
Wow.
So they see a little bit of that side of things. Looking at going down to recording studios in Toronto and giving them an idea of that side of the industry. All of those sorts of things are a part of letting them experience all sides of the art form that I want them immersed in. So that's kind of part of the extracurricular experience. Oh, and trips, taking them on overnights, whether it's band camp or whether it is trips like we did last spring to Europe, where they see and get to perform and participate in music on a global perspective. So,
what's the so when the kids go into some of this extracurric, what is kind of like some of the loot bags that you've observed in the kids? Like what are they coming away with after participating in this stuff that's not directly in class but so vital too?
They're coming away, I think the biggest thing for me is they're coming away with a greater sense of teamwork and family for them. And a lot of the kids who sort of see this all the way through to, say, grade 12, that's one of the biggest things that they come back to when they talk about their experience in high school music is, this was my family for 4 years. These are the kids that they did everything together. And they said, a lot of them, we had some good conversations last year, for instance, with some of my grade 12s that were graduating. And they said, a lot of these kids that we are such good friends with, we would not have necessarily made those connections with through some of our other courses, just because we didn't see those shared interests in that way until we were in this space. So they recognize the fact that they had that opportunity to build some friendships and some connections that they might not have done so otherwise. And I think that for me is one of the biggest things that we like to encourage and that the kids really talk about, is making those connections and having so much fun together sharing those experiences.
Yeah, it's we talk often as educators about the experiential learning. But I think sometimes that list of what we put on the experiential learning, like the possibilities, is sometimes, I think it falls short. Yeah. And I wonder often around if we're being brave enough in what we actually suggest as some of those experiences. And not to mimic real life. I'm on the fence around the whole argument, is school real life and how close do we have to get to it? Right. But if it's the place to be able to have a taste of the experience, and maybe one part of the experience dips its toe into real life, but it's very much a sort of as you said, family experience with the school. I've seen it too. The kids, they just explode out of that experience.
Yeah. And I love that. I think the other side of it too is that it sometimes captures and connects with those kids who are naturally shy, maybe a little more introverted, that suddenly have a space that is supportive and that feels like they belong no matter how they see themselves. You know, if they know that they're shy or if they know that they're quiet or whatever, they still know that there's a place for them in that musical ensemble, that they are part of that, and that there's a shared success experience. And I know we do a lot of reflective writing in
Mm-hmm.
our band and choir activities after we've done a performance, or as we're getting ready for something. I ask them to sort of look at some of these experiences, and a lot of the things that some of those quieter kids often will say in the post-performance reflections are things like, I've made so many friends here, and I really feel like I belong. Or then you get the kids who will. I always, one of the questions I always ask my students is, "What's one thing that you're proud of?" Because I don't think students always give themselves credit for the hard work that they've done. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to make them look at something to be proud of. I want them to recognize that. And a lot of the kids will often say, "I'm proud of somebody else." Like they will really recognize that it took a lot of courage for that kid to get up and do this activity, or this group to put on a performance. And they will recognize and congratulate another group for
Mm-hmm.
the efforts that they made and the courage that they showed. And it's awesome to see them be proud of each other as well as themselves.
The gratitude piece, I think, it's one of those. It's a topic that I find myself. I'm in these conversations often now, where the importance of not only trying to stay in the moment so that you can actually genuinely convey gratitude, but then conveying the gratitude, that second layer. And
Yeah.
I think I totally agree with you. The ability to be able to share gratitude for what someone has taught you or showed you, or for their bravery, is first and foremost. I think that's almost more important than the second gratitude, which is appreciating your own effort. And I've experienced the same thing. The students that are almost more willing to be external in being thankful. It's the social convention kind of
Yeah.
thank you, and not soak quite long enough in the, this is really cool what you did.
Yeah. Be proud of what you did. Own it. Enjoy it. Celebrate it.
It is true. The you sort of you've talked about the importance of family and the importance of the students being reflective, and sort of how do you go about within the music within the music program? How do the students then bring those reflections? Are the reflections then shared amongst the class? Are they shared with
Yeah.
you? How do they share that sort of like?
They share with me initially, and then I often will sort of will tabulate a lot of the comments that they make and share that back with them, so that with some anonymity,
Mm-hmm.
but sort of allowing them to sort of say, is to see what others were saying and suggesting and that kind of stuff, as well as even things like feedback from them in terms of what we all need to do to move forward and get better at what we're already doing, or ways we can do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
I think student input is crucial. So allowing for that and encouraging that is a big part of it. So we have a lot of discussion after we've done performances or after we've done activities where we take that feedback as a group and see where it leads us next.
Yeah, it's the reason that I ask is that I can remember in the past trying to start a writers group, and I found the best writing that was being created. Often the writers did not want to share it. They had it was so personal. They
Yes.
couldn't excuse me. They couldn't give it away because it was so personal to them, and
Right.
of course they felt protective, and I respected that. But it made me sort of recognize that often what we look at as positive risk in class,
Yep.
there's quite a bit of variation to what a student can feel is
Yeah.
actually risky, and it's to share your reflective practice, I think, with anybody is a very courageous risk to take.
Yeah, I put myself on the line too, in that I'm happy to share with them the things that I've experienced that were scary. And that, I talk about some of my own performing experiences where things went well and sometimes things did not. and, that was okay to sort of roll with that. And that's part of learning and that's part of moving ahead. And that everybody gets scared and everybody gets nervous, and sometimes things go wrong and people don't love you any less for that. And just kind of you get to another chance to learn again.
So that modeling risk, that's interesting, because I had a little check mark beside one of the things I wanted to ask you. And sharing, are you just in general, are you a storyteller in your teaching? Do you share those sort of like stories of, I remember when I first picked up a guitar, or I remember that first time I stood up in front of 300 people and sang?
Yep, absolutely.
What does risk taking look like to you in real time, though? So when you're not telling a story, do you think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot right in front of the kids right now, and just so can you throw down on that? What does that?
There have been some times, and I that is something that I need to get better at. I guess I look at sort of my experiences with tech lately, and trying new things with kids and sort of saying, hey guys, we're going to try this activity today. I don't know if it's going to work yet because we're trying it. If it does, great. If it doesn't, well, we'll go back to plan B or something. So there have been certainly times in class with tech in particular that I'm like, let's try this piece of software, or we'll try this activity online and see if it works. And if it doesn't, well, we'll come up with something else. So they know that I try new things with them a lot, because a lot of things are not the same every time. So I try and do a lot of that, but it's one thing that I'd like to do a little bit more of is that on the fly, risk taking sort of thing. So working on it.
So let's, if the 5 years ago version of you met the 2017 version of you, what's the thing that and this is you looking at you. I know it's making it a little schizophrenic, but you looking at you. Yeah. I'm kind of making up this question as I go, but you looking at you, what would that older, actually younger version of you think, holy crap, that is so cool what you're doing. I don't even get it. Like, how do you get from me to doing that thing in music?
Right. Wow. That's a big question. I think the integration of technology for me has been a big, fast learning curve. And looking at things like using digital portfolios, and not, not being afraid to sort of implement new software and jumping on the bandwagon kind of thing is something that I love to do. If I think that it's going to benefit my students in a way that is effective. The fact that I've suddenly become a computer geek of sorts, more so than just a music geek, is shocking to myself in some ways.
Really, you carry it very naturally, my friend. You carry it very naturally. You carry it very naturally.
Thank you. I quite enjoy being a bit of a tech geek these days. It's awesome, and my students know that I love to learn new stuff. Usually because I have a tendency to walk into class in the morning and go, "Guess what I learned last night?" And they're like, "Oh God, here she goes again," because that tends to happen a lot. We shift gears a lot in my classrooms, in terms of, hey, Miss Kervin learned something on Twitter last night. Guess we're doing this one now. So there's a lot of that. And that's not something I sort of ever thought that who I would be sort of, looking back 5 years ago. It wasn't as big a part of my world as it is now by any means.
Do you think this is something is it permanent? Or is this level here to stay for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's I've really enjoy. I so enjoyed learning, and now that there is, I think with the way that technology is moving now and the implementation of it in the education world, there's so much more opportunity for me to learn on my own time and in my own way.
Hmm.
So that's easier to do now than it was, and so that's something that's certainly going to be part of my world moving ahead for sure.
Yeah, I love it too. I have seen you sort of in passing. You know, I sort of you get a little bit of your feed, and you're like, oh, so and so is in that Twitter chat. I'm off to this Twitter chat.
Yeah.
It's that there's a funny like digital kind of hallway that sometimes you walk through. It's like, hey, where are you going to? I'm going to
Yeah.
this. Okay, see you later.
That's exactly it. Like I think you and I crossed paths on
Yeah,
a digital webinar sort of thing back in November, December, something
yeah,
like that. It's like, okay,
yeah,
I'm going to go watch this webinar and you go watch that one and then we'll compare
yeah,
notes later
exactly.
on.
Yeah, I really I dig that that sort of opportunity exists to us, and I totally get the like my students right now. They're at the point where if you know you get into one of these clough moments, I'm in the class and I'm sort of talking about something. It's like out there on the fringe frontier of kind of like where I go often, where I get
Yep.
lost often, and one of them will turn like. You were like on Twitter this morning, weren't you? I'm like, yes, I was.
That
But that's
yeah,
besides the point.
right. My students often recognize that that Miss Kervin has clearly been at a workshop. She walks back in and goes, "Hey guys, guess what?" They're like, "Oh, new stuff."
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I think
Yeah.
this is why it's a big part of not only your sort of your energy and your positivity and your positive risk taking. Me calling you I almost said a primate, but I did not. But I ended up saying it anyways. How terrible! Pirate.
Thank you.
I guess I have
Yeah.
to edit myself out. Um, Saying that you're a pirate is because often when we're passing in the halls like that, one of the consistent places that I see you kind of checking in on is that hashtag, this anything that's sort of like some LA something LAP.
XP lap.
Yeah.
Explore like a pirate.
So tell me about that. Tell me about that and how it fits with you. Like, what are you getting from that group?
This is my one of my new learning directions for myself. And actually, it's funny that you talk about that because that's why we're starting this chat so late tonight. Is because I was on a Twitter chat earlier
Mm,
that happens at 8 on Wednesdays, and it's all about gamification in the
mm,
classroom. And it's sort of built out of the book that started it all was one by Dave Burgess called Teach Like a Pirate. And then so many people sort of really enjoyed that and built out from that concept of that pirate who hooks people in and works outside the box and totally goes all in on a story to bring their students along with them. That's kind of that pirate mentality.
hmm.
Then you got authors writing things like Mike Matera, who wrote this book called Explore Like a Pirate, all about how to implement gaming strategy into education and into curriculum. And so it's something that I really have been looking at doing. It sort of builds out from something I used to do when I taught elementary music. And we had what's called the Band Olympics program, where students completed certain challenges, and when they got to 10 challenges, they were at the bronze level. And then they continued working through more challenges to achieve silver and on their way to gold and so on. And there were certificates and there were leaderboards and all those kinds of things that were part of the gaming world. And so I'm starting to look at putting that back in at the high school level now, and sort of chatting with all of these people on Twitter to say, hey, how are you doing it? And how can I adapt that to my own world? So that's kind of where that comes from these days. And it's interesting because I just in the chat tonight, I sort of said, yeah, I sort of tried launching it this past semester. It did not go the way I had hoped. So a bit of a crash and burn on my part, but that's part of learning. So you pick yourself up and you rebuild and regroup and try it again differently, perhaps. So we'll see how it goes when I launch it again in second semester. So it's
That's
all
very
about
cool.
learning.
Yeah, I didn't know that you taught at elementary.
I did 8 years in the elementary program, elementary system. I was a grade 7 and 8 teacher, music teacher for years. And I love that I have that experience in the elementary panel as well as the secondary.
I
So,
did not know that. That's so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So that's the I love that you sort of you brought, I mean, we've gone kind of like from the risk taking to, switching it up in your teaching, and then you brought about the failure, that that potential for failure. I have sort of like two different ways to come at this.
Okay.
When you're going, I was talking with my colleague right now, and we're talking about how that sort of the sense of failure
Yep.
can sometimes keep us from making courageous decisions.
Yep.
Without getting specific about the conversation we're talking about, what I observed was often we're willing to take the risk with even the cost of failure on behalf of our students. We're amazing that way. Yet, often when we're given the opportunity for ourselves to take a risk, we're less likely to say yes and go for it. So, and it's just something that I've observed. But my question in this is, if you've ever been in that moment, how do you get out of your own way? So you're kind of sitting there like, oh, like I so want to give that a try.
Yep.
What is it that what's your process for? Because I think it's valuable. This is valuable learning, because there's teachers out there that do want to try this Twitter chat. They want to just do an activity in front of the kids, and let's see, we're going to build this plane in the air. We're going to see,
Yep. Yep.
see how this works out. How do you get out of your own way?
I'm still working on that one.
Okay.
It really does come down to not over planning, I think. You need, if the more that teachers over plan stuff, I think, the less we leave to the students and allow them the creative space that they need.
Gotcha.
And I think that was part of even some of my failure on this round of it in this past semester. And I have a tendency, there's a colleague that I work with on a lot of projects and stuff, and he and I will sit down and we'll come up with an idea. And we will plan it out like crazy. And we have this wonderful idea and it sounds fantastic and it's awesome. And then we'll put it in place and realize we made it way too big and way too involved when it would have been just as successful to do sort of half the size and let the kids build it any bigger if they wanted to. So I need to work on that a little bit more myself, and letting the students take ownership and sort of giving them the nugget of an idea and letting them expand it, and not thinking that I have to have it entirely perfect before I hand it over, because I'm a perfectionist, and that's hard to be sometimes. And that's part of my own learning and stuff, is that sometimes done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
So if I want the students to buy in, sometimes, yes, I have to get out of my own way. I have to get out of their way in order to let that happen.
It is tough. It's totally tough. Like back in my previous portfolio, teaching the hospitality stuff, and there's customers, virtual or otherwise, but you're always, my guess is that even when the student walks in grade 9 and has never picked up a saxophone before, the relationship with the audience begins now.
Yes.
And in the same thing in my hospitality class, okay, you've never chopped a vegetable, but the moment you sit in my class, there's officially someone sitting out there ready to eat your soup. And I get that that compulsion, probably more of a compulsion, to jump in and keep them on track. In some ways, I've always found if I did it wrong, then I'm breaking their flow.
Yep.
Totally breaking their flow.
Yep. And I think this is where I think education needs to allow, or the education system that we currently perhaps have, maybe needs to allow for more fluidity. I'm very much the type of teacher who will completely change course on something if there's a new if something new kind of comes on the scene. For example, Gord Downey released The Secret Path back in October.
Yep.
And I don't know if you watched that on CBC. But that changed the direction of a project idea that my students and I wanted to implement. And by doing so, it derailed a little bit of this gamification plan that I kind of had. But the project direction that we went in, after I allowed that inspiration of that episode to come into my classroom, resulted in an incredible experience for my students, where we actually wrote and recorded a song that we just showcased today at a symposium at the Ontario Science Centre.
Wow.
And yeah, it was awesome. And they actually got to work with a professional musician, and they worked with professional recording equipment, and created an awesome piece of music that was inspired by the experiences of our First Nations communities and youth that they learned about, starting with The Secret Path. And had that not shown up on the scene in October, we may not have gone in that direction. So I love that we did that. It means that maybe I didn't quite cover all the curriculum content that I wanted to. But I think that's okay, given what we did do. But it makes it difficult sometimes to sort of fit all of the curriculum content into the time frames that we have, if we aren't fluid enough.
I want to give a shout out to someone that I've come across, again, in that sort of digital PLN and just listening to way too many podcasts. There's
you and me both.
Dude, like you can't stop, right? It's like you're sort of thinking, hey, if I walk instead of like drive, I'll be able to get that 45-minute thing in.
I know.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, we did podcast projects last year in class because I was so into podcasts last year. Again, changed the direction of things. Yeah.
The person that you got to check out is this educator out of Ottawa. Her name is Shauna Pollock.
Okay.
She's starting up a school in Ottawa called Blue Sky. And I don't know if it's Blue Sky School, but Blue Sky. Her background is in formal education, but she's also done like work at Disney. And she's gone deep into this, as far as like, I think she's even released a book that in the title says something about bringing the magic to your classroom.
Yeah. And
I don't remember where I heard her being interviewed. She's on Twitter. You can follow her there. She's got a blog as well. But in the interview, here's the thing, profound moment. The person is listening to her talking about the open inquiry school that she's looking to develop. And how the students are going to be in charge of their learning, the project's open, high interest, deep learning. And the question comes up, as it always does. We find ourselves there, whether it's a question or it's like a challenge. What about the expectations?
Yeah.
And her response to it, and I'm paraphrasing, and I might be decontextualizing way too much, or maybe just the way she said it totally connected with my brain. Her response was like, yeah. And I don't mean that in a really disrespectful fashion.
No, I get it.
But she's having open conversations. It's a private school, okay? But she's having open conversations with the students that are enrolling, where they've already talked about that some of their learning may in fact not lead directly to OSSD, but we're going to figure that out later. And I was like, oh, yes.
Yep, absolutely.
You are living my alter ego reality of teaching, because it so hit me in my soul that so much of what we do gets betrayed in some ways because of our just sometimes blind drive to connect it back to curriculum.
Yeah. I'm such a supporter of passion projects and genius hour activities and so on. And you know what? my biggest challenge with those are, because I've implemented them a couple of times now in my programs, they work best over a longer period of time, perhaps, than just one semester. I think. I think you can do good things in one semester, but I think that real authentic learning shouldn't have to fit in those 4 or 5 months, and that there are all kinds of really neat ways of bringing that in, so that students get a chance to follow inquiry options, or follow a path that is something that they are passionate about, and that is learning. And then we tie in curriculum, on the back end, in a sense, and that there's value to that too. But I don't know that necessarily starting with curriculum is always the answer. So sometimes starting with an idea or a passion or an interest, and going from there is important. So
what it was interesting in listening to that, in listening to Shauna talk on the podcast, I realized how far I have to go in my own brave pursuits of what I believe to be a proper education. Because one of the responses that I had, and I consider myself to be it doesn't take much to get me to say yes.
Me neither.
But she's a whole other ballgame. Like, I'm listening to her and I'm thinking to myself, I am not that brave. I hear you. It's like your words connected were already a song in my soul. You said the words. I didn't think I'd ever hear it outside my head. I'm like, who's listening? Right? I'm like, I actually had I got a little scared that I was just like, but it was a thrilling kind of a scare. I was like, I am not that brave, because it's her, and I think there's her, and she's got a colleague that are opening up the school.
Awesome. Well, I met a principal today at this symposium that we were at the Science Center, that was all based on social innovation. That was the concept behind the symposium, and the projects that we launched back in the fall that we showcased today. And there was a principal there that her school had participated in this program, and they actually have a 3-year structure in their school where the students in grade 10 start sort of an action service plan activity as part of their civics and careers course in that grade 10 level.
It makes so much sense.
And then they continue with it. That they have to sort of take the next grade 11 course that is along with it, and then into grade 12, so that they really are starting to build a 3-year process. Yeah. And it was fascinating listening to her talk today. And there were a lot of us that sort of went up to her afterwards and talked with her in further detail about sort of what that looks like at their school. And they are an Ontario public school. But they've sort of sorted out how this works for their school and how this works for their staff. And they've tied it into all aspects of their school programs in every subject. And it's amazing.
I was at Quest this year, and there's Mary
Followed it on
Ward's,
Twitter, didn't get there.
Yeah, I was. I'll tell the story another time off recording, because it was a bit of a fiasco the way it worked out. But I'll share with you. But while I was there, transformational presentation, Mary Ward's school. They're a Catholic school in Toronto.
I know that school. Yes, I've heard great things about it.
Something like the last 15 years, they've been running this open inquiry based learning, where there's the students are taking credits, but they are designing their projects that fit within the expectations. They meet with a academic facilitator or counselor to make sure they're staying on track. But it is entirely that sort of that space between where, let's say, you and I are kind of pushing our bubble, and where Shauna Pollock is pushing with the Blue Sky School. It is that. And they've been doing it for 50. They've been doing it for some. When I put my hand, I'm like, yeah, how long have you been doing this for? I think at like 5 years. Like, yeah, we've been doing this for like 15. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. There's a school in the States that is doing a few schools in the States and stuff that are doing similar sorts of things, where they're teaching an innovation course.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea is the only thing that those students are sort of tackling in that course is a passion project. and that classroom becomes a home base where they sort of check in with that teacher advisor who runs this course. They have, various parameters to sort of meet along the way. But if, for instance, their innovations passion project requires them to use the art room, then that's where they might spend that class. Is in the art classroom, or they might be in the auto shop or the wood shop or whatever.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea is that they're being innovative and connecting with the community outside as well.
That's phenomenal.
I would love to teach that course. Absolutely love to teach an innovation course.
I would just like to be able to shadow. I would like to sort of like intern. Yes. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I guess we kind of are. If we look at our depth and breadth of involvement in digital PLN, we're getting a taste.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
making those connections, having those conversations, starting the process.
And I would agree with you. I want to go back to one of the things that you said. Like, I can't go back. I can't not use Twitter now. Mm-hmm. I was actually saying to my spouse, I said, there at least 90% of what I would consider the best personalized PD that I'm freely rolling back into my pedagogy and giving to the school board is from my digital PLN.
Absolutely.
Easily, 90%. Mm-hmm. And, I had in talking with this guy, Derek Rodenizer,
yep.
We talked about that. We talked about how whether or not this type of pursuit of learning, like you had said before, whether or not it should be accreditable. Mm-hmm. And if be a board that's daring enough to sort of say, okay, you have your Google Educator certification, level 1 and 2. That is going to be worth something.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that conversation starting because I'm going to grab front row. I'll bring the snacks.
That sounds good. I'll be right there. Save me a seat.
I will. I will definitely. I have a couple more things I want to throw at you, and then we can.
Let's do it.
Okay. So when it's kind of going a little bit back to that the 5 year ago version of you looking at you now, and what would sort of be like the wow factor. As you are right now in your program, what would you be able to say what you've had to let go of? So not what you've added, but kind of what you've had to let go of to become the teacher that you are right now. Or some stuff that you've had to stop doing because it's just like, you're kind of hanging on to old ways. I
have had to I've had to teach myself how to delegate better. I've also had to let go of my perfectionist side to some extent. Because the perfectionist side of me, the I need to do it myself side, has had to sort of recognize that and allow for students to do things. And they may not do things the way that I would. And that's okay. And that's been hard for me sort of, again, as the perfectionist, to sort of let go of and say, no, this is their version. This is their take on it. Or, I don't have to design that so completely, or that it's okay if my band makes some mistakes when we perform. Because that's just part of learning to be a musician.
Yeah, for sure.
And like I said, the perfectionist in me cringes, but not nearly as much as I did 5-10 years ago, even. That it's just, I'm embracing those mistakes with the kids and for the kids, and
Gotcha.
and sort of looking at, let's celebrate the wonderful things, and we learn from the spaces for improvement, and letting go and allowing myself to delegate more, both with colleagues and with students. Those are some of the big things I've had to let go of.
It's fascinating because I'm on the opposite side of that. I've actually had to step in closer because I'm a bit of personality wise, I'm detached. I'm kind of a detached guy, and I sort of hold people accountable more according to, like, if I've sort of run you through it once, you seem to have the understanding. Now I expect you to deliver, and that's probably industry really informing my pedagogy, management, not teaching. And but the mistake with that is that sometimes the detachment, like you mentioned back before, that, you know, extracurricular part of that key is that it's the family connection. It's that what you're learning in class is one thing, but what you're experiencing with the group is just as important.
Absolutely.
And so I've had to work on that. I've had to work on not being so cold.
Right.
Because it can come across that way sometimes, and I know for sure it's well, I blame my mom first. No, just joking. but I know it comes out of industry where, you know, I've had to, despite the fact that sometimes when I work with students, they remind me of some of my staff from the past. These are still children, and there's a parent nurturing role that I have to remind myself to stay connected to, because I think it's definitely in that mode that some of the passion will come out, the trust will come out, the Clough, I'm going to take a risk on this because I can see you're going to be with me there, and you're not going to let me just like fall. So it's fascinating to hear you're on the other side, that you need to let go a bit.
Yep. I have to remember that students have to make mistakes. They have, that's the only way they learn. And I have to allow for that. So it's not up to me to anticipate those errors and let them avoid it.
I'm so bad at that.
It maybe is me it's my role to anticipate those errors and be ready to catch them on the other side of them, perhaps. Yeah. But I can't necessarily take away every experience of mistake or wrongdoing or whatever the case may be, so to speak. I need to let them have that experience and back them up on the other side.
Okay, I was going to go in one direction, but I'm going to throw something else in front of it first. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So you brought me down to a place because I mentioned before that our school is not. I don't have a comfortable sort of like ice floe to stand on in the conversation around, is school real life? Okay, I don't have a comfortable place. But here's the thing that I do believe, that students, teens, children should be able to make wise mistakes in school. They should be able to make messy situations that they feel they have support and capability to fix, create, manage, whatever. That's kind of like my thing in school.
Yep.
So one of the conversations I found myself in a week ago is, then what is failure? What is actually failure then? If we are, because it almost feels like it's necessary that we need to recontextualize what failing is. Is it a zero? Is it a, you have to do an extra assignment? Is it shame? Is it emotion? Like, what is failure? Is there anything in your teaching that failure is a good thing?
There's so many angles on that question.
You grab whatever grabs you.
Well, you know what, and I go back to my Twitter PLN, where, you know, there's a lot of discussion about what is failure, and there's a lot of people that sort of go back to that acronym that fail now. Sort of people are starting to talk about it standing for that first attempt in learning. And that, failure might be a crash and burn. It might be something small. It's a little bit different sometimes in the music world, because we have to aim for a little bit more perfection sometimes in music than we might in another type of subject area. For instance, for example,
cooking chicken, you can't make a mistake.
Exactly. If we're going to play the national anthem at a public sporting event, we don't dare get a wrong note. There's no room for failure there. So that sort of raises that bar a little bit for music students. So that failure needs to happen in the rehearsal space. and needs to be embraced, because we need to have the failures to figure out how to improve, and that they need to experience that. And I think that I worry that we're not letting students fail enough, and that they're not building resilience.
It's kind of like the antibiotic, let your kid eat dirt kind of argument, right?
Absolutely.
So our students, I'm going to quote, so here, what I need for you to say so I can put on the lead in is, our students need to eat more dirt.
They do. What did you want me to say that?
I'll find something else to put in. It's funny enough in the argument.
No, it's great. And it's funny. I was thinking about sort of how I got to be where I am, and I'm reading I think it's Amanda Duckworth's book about grit and resiliency and so on and so forth. And I sort of think, well, how did I get there? And I look back and I think some of it comes from the fact that my family moved a lot when we were kids. Mm-hmm. And much as I sort of didn't like it and resented it, I think at the time as a child, it's like, okay, I'm packing again. And I was always the new kid in my new school or in my new program or whatever. So you get really good at starting over, at picking up something new, at rebuilding your own self-image, in a sense. Every time you have to jump into a new situation. And I think when you don't have some of those experiences where you have to sort of start fresh, you lose that sense of building resiliency and sort of survival skills, so to speak, in the real world. How do you come back from a failure? How do you come back from a change that you maybe weren't expecting? That's all part of that process. So
wow, it's profound, because I see it. I mean, we've moved to talking about the students, but I see that as well. That the fear of failure for educators, I think, is a palpable,
huge
barrier for some, right?
Mm-hmm. It's certainly why you get so many of them not willing to integrate tech yet, because it can be terrifying.
Someone said to me, they use the example that if you're not currently using tech, like if you haven't sort of because there's tech, and then there's sort of like cloud, and then there's
there's various levels of tech, so to speak. Yeah.
Exactly. And part of the way it was sort of put to me is it's like the sea floor falling and the water rising, and you deciding where you're going to swim in those depths.
Yep.
Do you tread? Do you actually sort of try to swim to the top? Are you just like, I'm going to anchor my boots to the seafloor because it is solid and I can hold my breath? Yeah. I got 2 more years. I can hold my breath.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you're not moving forward, you're treading water.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. I do have one more thing to wrap it up.
All right, bring it on.
You ready for this one?
All right.
You're gonna rock this one for sure.
Good to know you've got that faith in me.
Yeah, I do, absolutely. So, what I'm curious about through all of this is that I do believe that we can go to university and you get your that credit that you end up want to teach. But I think that being in education has changed kind of fundamentally in the last 3 to 4 years, where you may or may not ever make it to your teachable. Mm-hmm. And the reality of it is that you still will want to work in education. You want to be an educator. And that can create some interesting tensions in your soul where, you're sort of, do I diversify? It can call into question why you took the degree in the first place if you don't get to teach it right away. But I think that there's a lot of little things that can help educators in this position when they sort of land and they get hired and they say, okay, yes, you have a beautiful English degree in Canadian literature and all this stuff, and you're going to be teaching history, and we're going to give you grade 11 geography. And how are you with like phys ed? And you're just like, whoa, that's quite a mix. So with that being kind of like, that's
The
kind
new
of like
reality.
that is the new reality. And I hesitate to say even new, because it almost suggests like it is sudden. And I'm a guy that likes to say that that there's been cues along the way, that the sort of like
Sure.
the game board's been changing slightly if you've been paying attention, right? But here's the question. This is the question to save them all. What would you, or sorry, who or what would you put sort of like into a master class for new teachers coming into teaching? And you can sort of pull from wherever you want. I mean, you can pull from your digital portfolio. And I'm not saying, give me 20, but can you call out 3 or 4 kind of key players that you think a new teacher would probably benefit them to kind of, check these people out? Because if it's not about you teaching your course, but it's about catching that on-ramp into teaching. All the other
Wow.
stuff that's not your curriculum.
Oh my
Would be good to
gosh.
be on that list.
Who would be on that list?
I know you have a list. I've looked at your list on Twitter. I've lurked on some of your conversations. You've got knowledge. Throw it down.
Wow, who would I put in that room? Any of those ex-PLAP kind of leaders.
Okay.
Michael Matera, Dave Burgess. The Passion Project and 20% time teachers like Kevin Brookhauser. Who else? AJ Giuliani. Some of these people who are looking at ways of integrating tech and passion and gamification. Sorry, all of
I might have to
you
slightly
may have
soften
to.
that.
That might require some editing.
That was awesome. I thought it was going to happen far more intentionally.
No.
Not
So
this
far,
part
so good.
I'll check it out on post production.
Any of those ones that are looking at ways to give you strategies for teaching anything. These are all teachers who recognize that a strategy can be applied across all kinds of platforms or subject areas. Those are some of the people that I would say are the ones to sort of to look for. Kuros, George, thank you.
Or Alec.
The innovator's mindset is another one. So, and who else? Oh, I don't know. There's so many. But again,
No, you know what? I think
it's those
good.
ones that are,
I get it.
like I said, outside the box, or that are looking at things that can be applied in any circumstance.
That's awesome. And is it safe to say that the 5-year ago version of you might look at that list and say, who are these people?
I would never have known any of these names if it wasn't
That's remarkable,
for my Twitter world. And most of them live in parts of the country I may never visit. Parts of the continent that I will never visit necessarily. But they are people that I have good connections with and can lean on for support.
It's mind-blowing, because I think of the people, I think of how different my digital learning has become even in the last year. And there's individuals that not only have I made digital connections with, but I've got to meet in real time, that I've told them quite directly, I love, and you are one of these people as well, I love that you that I meet now in real time absolutely mirror your digital presence. And I think there's some incredible sharing to be done there, because I think that that's a real fear for some people as far as engaging with digital learning, that how can that be authentic? Like, I don't even know this person. I've had that moment, that little fanboy moment. I'm like, oh my God, I've been talking to you for like 3 or 4 conversations on Twitter, and I get to meet you, right? And it's like,
absolutely,
and it is quite thrilling. And we're talking about education here. Like, it's like you get to meet you too.
Yes.
You get that kind of jazzed up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and I've, as a music person, I've connected with podcast leaders, with a producer in LA who actually donated a drum set to my program.
That's awesome.
He's Katy Perry's producer. You know,
wow.
like he's recording right now with Kim
By
Kim
the way.
Mitchell, and this
That's
is
cool.
someone that I have not only talked with on Twitter, but have met now in person because of that digital connection to start with. And it's exciting and it's phenomenal. And yes, it's very fangirl-ish when you do get to meet these people and these educators, and you go to these conferences and summits and so on, and you see it in action. And it's inspiring and exciting.
And we can't go back.
No, there is no going back. There's only going forward.
We can't go back. All right, Miss Jocelyn,
Mr. Clough.
do us all a favor and tell us where you can be found so people can have other really cool conversations with you.
I am on Twitter. My handle on Twitter is @jkervs, so JKERVS. I am there and chatting on Wednesdays a lot of time on the XP Lab Twitter chat. Looking to jump in on the Wire DSB talk. Sorts of things, and looking at following along on the world of hyperdocs as well. That's my new learning course right now, and I'm going to look into that sort of thing. So that's where I live.
They are cool. Fantastic. Well, I can't have any more gratitude. I'm so happy that you agreed to come on.
This was fun,
and it was fantastic. And I guess we can do the virtual handshake or the high five. If we had the video up, we could sort of fist bump into our screen or something.
We'll do it live on Friday when you stop by my work.
Yeah, I will.
All right.
I will.
Very good.
I will. I will drop by and I'll drop in anyhow. Okay, fantastic, Jocelyn. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Take care.